Right now, without looking down, you know where your left foot is. You know these words are landing somewhere inside you. You know you are here. A jellyfish almost certainly does not know that in any meaningful sense. A crow might. A chimpanzee probably does. Your dog, annoyingly, makes the whole question much harder. Because do animals know they exist? Sounds simple until you actually try to answer it. Then it immediately turns into 3 or 4 different questions wearing one trench coat. Do animals feel anything at all? Do they know their body as theirs? Do they recognize themselves as individuals? Do they know what they know and what they do not know? Humans roll all of that together and call it the self, which is convenient. It is also messy, because the human version of self-awareness is loud. It narrates. It replays awkward things you said in 2017. It imagines the future. It worries about death. It builds a little theatre inside the skull and then sits in the front row. Call that the inner witness. The real question is whether animals have one too. And the first answer is yes, but not all in the same way, and not to the same depth. Start with the most famous test in the field, the mirror test. In 1970, psychologist Gordon Gallup put chimpanzees in front of mirrors. At first they treated the reflection like another chimp. Threats, gestures, curiosity, the usual social chaos. Then something shifted. They started using the mirror to inspect parts of their own body they could not normally see. Gallup then put a mark on their face while they were anesthetized. When they woke up and saw themselves, they touched the mark on their own body, not on the mirror. That matters, because it suggests the chimp was not thinking that is another chimp with a weird face. It was thinking something much stranger. That is me. Since then, versions of the mirror test have been passed by bottlenose dolphins, Asian elephants, and even magpies in a 2008 study by Helmut Pryor and colleagues. Which sounds impressive until you remember something important. The mirror test is deeply unfair. It is a vision test disguised as a philosophy test. A dog failing the mirror test does not mean your dog has no self. It means your dog thinks mirrors are a stupid human scam and smell is the real internet. And there is actual evidence for that. In 2017, Alexandra Horowitz ran what people now call the olfactory mirror test on dogs. She let dogs investigate their own urine, then a modified version of their own urine with an extra scent added. The dog spent more time investigating the altered version. In other words, the dog was not just smelling urine, it was smelling my urine, but wrong. That is self-recognition, just not the glamorous kind humans prefer. So already the answer gets more interesting. Some animals may know themselves without using sight the way we do. The self might exist in smell, movement, territory, body sensation, not in a reflected face. And this is where the whole topic improves dramatically, because now we are not asking whether animals are tiny, broken humans. We are asking what kind of self each species can afford to have. A chimpanzee lives in a social world full of alliances, deception, memory, rank and family drama. Of course it helps to know who you are in relation to others. A dolphin lives in an acoustically complex social world where bodies, sounds, and relationships matter constantly. Again, self-recognition is useful. An octopus is weirder. An octopus has a distributed nervous system so strange it feels like biology got experimental after dark. A huge amount of its neurons are not even in the central brain. They are in the arms. Each arm can do semi-independent problem-solving. So if you ask whether an octopus knows it exists, the first honest answer is probably in a way that would feel profoundly inconvenient to us. Not I think, therefore I am. More like something with 8 very opinionated limbs is happening in here. And yet octopuses solve puzzles, open jars, distinguish people in labs, and display clear preferences and aversions. They act like beings to whom experience is happening, which sounds obvious until you realize how little that actually takes. A creature does not need philosophy to have a point of view. It just needs a world that appears from somewhere. That somewhere is what we are really hunting. Now go one step deeper. Recognizing your body is one thing. Knowing that your own mind can fail is another. This is where metacognition enters the room, which is just the expensive word for knowing what you know. In 2001, Robert Hampton ran experiments with rhesus monkeys and showed that they could sometimes opt out of memory tests when they seemed uncertain. They performed better when they chose to take the test, worse when forced. Other studies with dolphins found similar patterns. The animal was not merely guessing at random. It appeared to have access to its own uncertainty. That is a serious mental trick. It is not proof that the monkey sits under trees contemplating existence and the emotional cost of empire. But it is proof of something almost as interesting. The animal is not just in the world. It has some access to the state of its own mind while being in the world. That means there is a self there sturdy enough to monitor itself. Which gets us to birds. Because birds enjoy humiliating mammal egos. Scrub jays, studied by Nicola Clayton and Anthony Dickinson, can remember where they hid food, what type of food they hid, and how long ago they hid it. More than that, if a scrub jay has experience stealing from others, it becomes more careful when caching food after being watched by another bird. It may go back and move the food later, as if taking into account what the other bird might know. That is not full human mind reading, but it is not nothing. If an animal can treat another creature as having a perspective different from its own, then it is already living in a world where self and other are meaningfully separated. That is a self-model. And that brings us to the part most people get wrong. The answer to this title is probably not binary. Not yes. Not no. More like layers. There are animals with almost no reason to build a rich internal model of self. A jellyfish does not need one. Its life is not socially or behaviourally complex enough to justify that cost. Then there are animals that clearly track their own body in space. Then animals that recognise themselves in a mirror or in scent. Then animals that seem aware of uncertainty. Then animals that may model what others know and therefore indirectly what they themselves know. The self thickens. That is the pattern. And humans are just one extreme version of that thickness. We do not merely feel ourselves. We narrate ourselves. We remember the younger self, imagine the future self, criticise the present self, and then charge the whole process to the nervous system. A dog may not have that. Honestly, good for the dog. But lack of a narrative self is not the same as lack of existence. A human infant does not sit there running a little autobiographical documentary either. You would still never say the infant does not exist to itself. Existence does not begin when language begins. It begins when there is a point of view, and that is the answer hiding under all of this. Many animals probably do know they exist, just not the way you do. Not as a sentence. Not as philosophy. Not as I am a self moving through time with unresolved family dynamics and a vague fear of mortality. More as body, boundary, memory, pressure, relation, action. I am this body. That is not my body. This pain is happening here. That food is there. That rival remembers me. That human is dangerous. That human is not. Which is less romantic than people want and also, in its own way, more impressive, because it means the world is not divided between souls and machinery. It is full of different kinds of inwardness, different ways for experience to be organised around a centre, different ways to be here. And some of them are probably much richer than we are comfortable admitting, because admitting that forces humans to climb down from one of our favourite little pedestals. The mirror does not create the self. It only catches one kind of it. So do animals know they exist? Some clearly do, in layered and measurable ways. Some probably have much thinner selves. Some may surprise us later. And a few, crows, dolphins, apes, elephants, dogs, octopuses, are already standing in the uncomfortable middle ground where the old human monopoly on selfhood starts looking embarrassingly overstated. They may not say I am. They may not need to. The world is probably far more full of private lives than we were taught to imagine.